Welcome to the P's and Q's podcast. I'm your host, Quinay Foray, and I'm living my best life. And I want to help you live your best life. On today's episode, we have a very special guest in the studio. He is a thought leader amongst us thought leaders, and I personally visit his page all the time. He's also the host of the University of Adversity podcast and a best-selling author of Mastering Adversity. His name is Lance Essihos. Am I saying that right, Lance?
Yeah, it's close. I've had so many different pronunciations. That's really good, actually.
I want to do it right. Say it for me.
Well, you can say Essihos or you could say Essihos. I just do less hos and more os.
Essihos.
Yeah,
okay.
You did a good job. I've heard every pronunciation over the years, so that's good.
That was terrible. I'm terrible. Okay. His name is Lance Essihos. Woo!
Yes.
Yay, Lance. Thank you so much for being here on the P's and Q's podcast.
Thank you for having me. Grateful to be here.
Yeah, I know my audience is going to be very excited to connect with you, get to know more about you as we go down this journey of learning who you are. I think the best way is to start with our fun facts. So I'll start with my fun facts. You guys know me so well. You know I travel a lot, but do you know the place that I've been to the most? And probably you guys actually do. This is a silly question, but Las Vegas. I'm a poker player. I live in LA. It's way too close. I've been to Las Vegas. I counted it recently over 110 times in my lifetime. In my lifetime. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Wild. That's a lot of Vegas trips.
Vegas is crazy. I don't know how you do it. That I could only, once I'm there, I'm like, get me out of here for a while. Like it's as soon as I get there, I'm like, yes, Vegas, I love it. And then I'm like, by like day 2 or 3, I'm like, get me the hell out of here.
You're like, get me the out of here. Yeah. I mean, I balance it out. I'm very much a spa. I restaurant. I play poker too. So I'm sitting at a poker table for 12 hours, just sitting there. So I don't get as drunk as I used to get in college in Vegas. Yeah. As drunk, let's say. What about you, Lance? What about your fun facts?
Well, my fun fact, I mean, if we're going to talk travel, I've been to about, I think 25, 26 countries.
Wow.
I lived in Australia for 5 years. And yeah, I used to play hockey. I used to bartend. And something weird about me that a lot of people laugh at when I tell them or I do it is I eat the whole kiwi skin and everything like an apple. I don't peel it. I wash it and I eat it. Yeah, I know. People are like, what's wrong with you?
Actually,
somebody told me one day that there's lots of nutrients. Yeah, somebody told me and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. And now I eat it. And I'm like, one of the things that drove me nuts about kiwis is like, I felt like I was wasting half the fruit by scooping it out. And I was like, I don't want to waste this. I just want to eat it and enjoy it. So there you go. There's my weird fact.
Look at you following your joy. I appreciate that. That's a really good fun fact, actually. And the next time I get a kiwi, I'm just going to eat it in honor of Lance.
Just eat it. You just got to do it.
Just eat it. Period. Fantastic. Well, in alignment with origin stories, I would love to get a better understanding of you and your origin. I'm on your Instagram all the time. I'm so grateful for all of the messaging and wisdom that you share. And I'd love to know, what's your origin? What's your spiritual awakening origin? When did you come into this to walk this path?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I've always known something deep inside me that was kind of like a whisper my whole life, and sort of like there is something you're meant to do, something that is meaningful. You're meant to do something that makes impact. But I didn't understand what that meant growing up. I just had this feeling that I need to do something that makes a difference. So I grew up playing sports. I played hockey, ice hockey for all those that I don't know how many listeners, and if they're from Australia, you have to say ice hockey. So I just make it clear. So that was what I
Yes.
played my whole life. And that's kind of what I thought I would do. And that didn't work out. So I went through like a really challenging time trying to figure out who I was after sports. And I went
Mm,
down a major dark spot, a lot of low moments in trying to discover who I was and who I wanted to be. And I tried a
mhm,
bunch of different jobs. Nothing felt right. And then I finally got into like the bar and restaurant industry where it was like there was something about it that I felt like I was service to people. Like I was giving people an experience. So it was
mm,
kind of checking off boxes that I although it was very toxic in a lot of ways, obviously the partying, the late nights and the craziness, but I also felt like I was serving in a way. And I liked knowing that I was giving somebody an experience so when they left they felt better or at least felt like they connected to somebody. And I like to be that person. And over the years the bartending all that sort of fell apart and I just kind of went into like another dark place and during that time, I kind of discovered spirituality. I started to kind of connect to myself through books. Like I originally was reading all these books about like rock stars and athletes that like went through all this crazy stuff and they were partying and doing all this stuff. And I was like, I asked myself, why am I reading this? Like, it doesn't
mm.
make me feel good. And then eventually I found the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart
Ooh.
Tolle.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
was the book. Yeah, that was the book just to kind of go back to like the spiritual awakening or when it started. That was when the first seed was planted where I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this book made me feel a bit different. And I started to understand what presence meant and like the past and the future. And then I started getting into meditation and stuff like that. But that was the first seed that was really planted that started to connect the dots with like that feeling of doing something with purpose. But I
Yeah.
didn't connect the dots until later on. But that was the first seed that was kind of planted in me through my story.
Ooh, that's a big seed right there.
Yeah.
That's that's a powerful book. For those of you who haven't read it yet, I highly recommend you guys get The Power of Now and dive into it.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It's a classic. Wow. And then you mentioned that you read that book and then but it took you some time before you started really like walking along that path. Like was there a long
Yeah,
period of
like
time?
there was yeah, so this I remember it clearly because I've had to do a lot of work around going back and just really figuring out times of my life where like change happened or when this happened or that happened. And I got that book when I was in Australia. I was living on the Gold Coast. I believe it was 2013. And I read it and it all made sense, but I didn't fully apply the things in my life. I was still, bartending and drinking and partying and just but there was that thing inside me that I started to meditate. I started to connect to myself
Mm,
and just feel what that felt like to be present. And
yeah.
it wasn't that I didn't start doing it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I just knew I like how this makes me feel. I started studying different philosophies and I was just like, I really like how this makes me feel. And I didn't
Yeah.
really understand what I was doing. So it wasn't until a couple years later until about well things got real different in 2017 is when things really shifted. But up until from 2013 to 2016 I was in this crossroads with myself between living a very destructive life and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to do something else but not knowing how I was going to do that. I was in a bartending position. I was a bar manager in Sydney, Australia, and I was just caught in this world of like, I know I could do better, but I can't get out of this. This is my job. And
Mm,
I was caught in it, but I knew that that whisper I talked about earlier was like getting louder. And it was like, you could do better than this, like this isn't your path. And I just kind of numbed that voice with booze and drugs and partying. And, um, until like, until I had to make the decision and make a big change.
And you just woke up one day and you said, fuck this, I'm going to do it? Or was there a catalyst? Like, what was it?
Yeah, yeah. So I it's interesting because like how I tell the story is always different. And I'm actually going to be doing a talk about this. So I like telling this story again about it
Thank
because
you.
it's really important. Um,
Yeah.
in 2016, I lost my younger brother to suicide. So
Mm.
this was January 2016. And um, my dad was visiting me that year for the first time in 3 years. I was living in Australia and he came to visit me. And I found out the news and I had to tell him. And that was one of the hardest moments of my life, was telling him that. And
Yeah.
just seeing the look on his face of having to explain to him what had happened, it really just, it tore him apart. And that was part of the things that tore me apart. And so once we took care of that, we had to fly back. We had to, take care of the funeral and all that. Um, I went back to Australia. My dad stayed in Canada. And my dad just sort of, I could tell that he had sort of just, there's something in him that just, I don't want to say gave up, but there was just this difference. We had lost my grandpa, my grandma, two uncles, and my younger brother in like 6 years. So there's a lot of family just gone.
Wow.
So once that happened, that was kind of like, I didn't know how to process that. So 2016 was an absolute dumpster fire of a life for me. Like I was working, I was going to work all night, partying. I would go to work until, 3 in the morning. I would drink, party till 10 a.m. I'd eat McDonald's. I'd go back to Bondi Beach in Sydney. I'd sleep. I'd go back to work. I would just do this on repeat. I was an absolute animal. I was a functioning alcoholic. I was great at my job. I never got fired. I don't know how I didn't, but I was good at my job enough that they needed me, and I was great with the people. I got things done, but I was a mess. I was an
Yeah.
absolute mess. And so 2016 was much of the same. And I went down this path. And there was points in my life where like I would have these dreams where I would like wake up and I would like have like tremors. And it was just I would jump out of bed and I was like, this is not good. My anxiety was so bad. It was
Mm.
so bad that I couldn't even walk to the bathroom at night. I would just be shaking and I'd have to like drink just to like numb that. So I would wake up in
Wow.
hot sweats, panicky. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I got to give this up. And then, I had tried it in the past. And then by the end of 2016, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this up for a lot of reasons. But there was that voice again inside me that was like, you need to do it this time. And I did it.
Yeah.
So I went sober. I started to do a lot of the personal development stuff, the reading, the meditations, just really getting dialed into myself. 6 months later, I'm sober. Then I get another call. My brother calls me and is like, Dad's got 48 hours to live. He's
Oh
got
my
stage 4 cancer. So I'm like, oh, fuck, not again. Right. So I'm in shock. Right. I'm 6 months
God. Yeah.
sober. I've been doing all the work. But this time, this is why I think this came from God, or whatever it was that came to me was like, you need to be sober because you're about to face some real difficult shit. And if I wasn't sober during that time when my dad passed away, there's no way that I could have dealt with it. So
Right.
thank God 6 months of sobriety allowed me to step into that. And yeah, I was hysterical. It was horrible. I had to fly all the way back to Canada from Sydney, Australia, direct 16-hour flight. Got there. I watched him die within 5 hours. I watched them pump him full of stuff and just watched him die. It was horrific to
Oh,
watch. I had to
darling.
watch him. It was terrible. But the point of that is I if I hadn't made that shift to quit booze for 2017 in January, I don't know how I would have been able to do that. And now I look back and I go,
Yeah.
there's a reason I did that. Right. So that 2017, having a loss like that from, it was 18 months, younger brother, dad. I was like, okay, so that was a big shift for me. So I came back, I finished running the bar. I was working for the Four Seasons in Sydney. I finished up the year and I said, I got to get out of this industry and I'm going to do something else. And
Wow.
at the end of 2017, I got out of the bar industry, which was so good to me. The industry was great. I don't want to knock it at all because like it's the only reason I was able to do anything. I had no other skills at the time. So
Mhm.
that was it. And that's how, like, that's that year. People always ask me, like, what was it? There was a lot of things in my life, but that space and time was like very, very important. That sober journey that I took for 2017, because it allowed me to really build on the foundation instead of digging myself out of a hole all the time. And prior to that, I was always digging myself out. So
Mm,
during that time, I was able to really work on my spiritual being and the growth, and really understand like who I am outside of the bar. Who am I? Who is this character that I've been playing? Can I be somebody else without the booze? There was all of that stuff, right? And that's when things really
yeah.
shifted for me.
Wow.
That's when
Thank you for sharing that
yeah.
story, Lance. That's a really heartfelt story and journey, and my love goes out to you for
Thank you. Yeah.
persevering through that for sure.
Thanks.
Wow. You have a book, an amazing book, Mastering Adversity, about unlocking the warrior within and turning your biggest struggles into your biggest gifts. Yes, look at the book. Look at that book. Yes.
That's
Oh
when
my
I
God.
was in Costa Rica with that beard. Like it's all
Yeah,
gone
I
now,
like
but
it. It's really
um
nice. And so hearing
thanks.
your origin story and now knowing the title of your book, it makes a lot of sense. It's you.
Yeah.
You
It's
did that.
yeah, I mean I'm a constant work in progress. I believe the healing journey is a ever evolving thing. If you seek growth and fulfillment in your life, you're always going to be challenged. And I don't have all the answers and have it all figured out, but I've definitely come a long ways from where I was. And the reason I wrote that book is because I wanted to be as raw and honest and share it with the world, not only with my own story, but to give people a framework on how and what is actually happening when adversity hits and how to move through it. And
Mm-hmm.
what's important to me, and it's always been important to me with the podcast, is just being, I want to be able to connect with people on a human level. Like that's what matters. If I don't resonate with somebody, then that's okay. But like I want to be and share as much truth as I can, because I believe the healing is in vulnerability and human connection. And if my book can speak to somebody on that level, then hopefully they'll trust me enough to listen and take the steps that's needed to kind of go through their own journey. And that's just my
Yeah.
perspective on it, right? But I really wanted to create a book that is actually going to somebody can read, relate to, and then just create awareness in their life. Like when shit hits the fan, how do you respond? What do you do? Like that's what's really
Yeah.
important, because
Because life be
what
life. And
defines us in life, well, what defines us in life, right? Life is about how you deal with difficult stuff, right?
yes.
Like when you're faced with something, how you deal with it defines who you are. It's not about when things are easy. How you define a person is how they deal with things that come at them, right?
Real shit.
And
Yeah.
after interviewing hundreds of people, with University of Adversity, from New York Times bestselling authors, pro athletes, to like the common hero among us, just like that, is just getting through life. The common theme is always that. It's always the persistence of just understanding that what's happening in front of them is actually going to benefit them in the end. The adversity doesn't isn't there to stop you. It's there to help you grow. And if you can somehow see that in the moment, that's the hardest part of all of this, is to see that what is happening right now is actually going to be the thing that you talk about later as being
Mhm.
a defining moment. Like
Yeah.
that's the beautiful
It's
thing about
hard
it.
in
But
the
it's hard.
moment.
It's
and
hard.
the
I mean, we
pony.
all go through it, right?
Yeah,
It's really hard in the moment. It's not an easy thing, and I don't want to pretend that it is. But if you can get really good at overcoming yourself every single day, if you can get really good at getting up, doing things, choosing a challenging thing, a discipline, something that when you're seeking discomfort, like I'm not saying you got to go and do crazy uncomfortable things, but when you seek things that challenge you on a daily basis and you overcome yourself every day, because we all have to do that, then the rest of life gets easier. The
yeah,
things, because the things will get thrown at you no matter what, right? So but if you condition yourself to be resilient daily, then when you get thrown these curveballs, you're like, oh wait a minute, I got this. I
yeah,
got this. I'm an empowered human. And I just think too many people are living in this like this victim mentality where they're trying to like move out of the way of it and just like avoid it, and it's just going to come at you worse, right?
yep.
And
We know how that goes. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah.
I love that. What a powerful message. I hope you guys were really tuning into that. He was dropping some gems on ya. Wow, Lance. Thank you for sharing your story with me and everyone. Thank you for all of the love and the light that you shine, all of the light codes that you drop here on the P's and Q's podcast, and also on your podcast and in your book. Can you tell everyone where they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. Yeah, just go to my Instagram, lance.ecos. You can find it all there, the podcast, the book, all the things, super easy. And yeah, check out the podcast. University of Adversity. We've been doing it for a while. I think we got like 418 episodes now. So I'm sure
Woo!
there's something for everybody on there. And yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It is my honor and sincere pleasure. I appreciate you so much. And for all of you listening, as always, thank you for being here. You keep shining and spreading your light. And I love you. Peace.